September. Okay, everybody's coming. We're going to start to have a discussion, and we want to hear from people and their experience in their breakout groups or in general. So, so I'm here, and Lane is here, Jordana, and Farrell. So we're all co-facilitating this. So if we can unmute ourselves, the facilitators, well, everybody unmute so we can talk.
So I just want to say that in my group, and I'm not identifying anyone, we had some pretty good a discussion that got very close to the bone on why someone decides to live where they're living, using the word safety, for example. So I thought that was good and movement forward.
Okay.
Jordana, can you say a bit more with you know, I'm just not sure I understand what you mean.
Oh, well, okay. I don't want to identify anyone in particular, but what we were talking about, I'm sorry, you're right, it wasn't clear. What we were talking about in our group is we got through the, you know, identifying and where people lived and so forth, which was really interesting. But the core question, at least to me, is why do you choose to live where you choose now? And one of the things that's hard for people to say, particularly white people, is I live there because I feel safe and basically because it's white and that's what I'm used to. And so no one said that particularly, but someone said, I feel safe and I know that that's a term that's really loaded and it's racially loaded, etc. And so that's, I hope that explains it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great, Susie.
Thank you.
And so as Jordana just, we're talking about safety, remember back to the homeowners loan corporation documents and see how these things get put in your mind. Mm-hmm. They said, these are security measures. So over years, we've heard safety, safety, safety. So anybody else want to join in? And Lane just joined in, and Farrell.
Yeah, so in my group, we didn't get to the final question. That would have been definitely interesting to hear about and sort of poll about. But we were primarily going through just the sort of explanation of background and neighborhood and where you grew up and sort of describing the demographic breakdowns of that sort of thing. That sort of took up the majority of the time. It is definitely well, it's definitely probably reflective of the breakout group more specifically, but it's definitely either, you know, like a small splash or a sprinkle, whatever you want to call it, of, you know, situations in which it was a fairly even sort of demographic breakdown in terms of schooling, even less commonly in terms of just in your immediate living space or neighborhood, or the majority of growing up in an all-white space. So, yeah, that was the sort of thing that was, I would say, probably expected, but it's definitely interesting to see it reflected and match up to the details of everything that we've been discussing.
Well, in our group, Farrell and I were in the same group. We had 8-9 people, so just 3.5 minutes just to share about our growing up and background, and then we really didn't have enough time to go into the stuff with 8 or 9 people. I guess it was 9. But it was interesting. The British, Susie shared about the British experience and class. And Susie, you said something in our group about class was kind of a base for racial divisions in Britain, but same results, 10% more wealth for white people than people of color in Britain. That was really interesting. But we also get mixed up on class in the United States. White people are always conflating it and acting like if I worked hard and I was poor at one point, then that's the same as anyone else who was poor. And there's a tendency to want to ignore the racial divide and just think about class.
Can I make a point?
Hold on one second. It looked like Susie was just about to chime in.
Oh, I was. Thank you, Lane. I was just going to say, it's the way, like in what I've been hearing in this talk is the political kind of policies that have been used to disadvantage Black people and advantage white people, like push the sales ahead of white people and disadvantage Black people and it's the it's a way to further the wealth and the well-being of one group over and above the well-being of another group. And exactly the same thing happens in the UK. And we use the class system. That's the political legislative system that we use, and it's really poisonous as well, because then me as a white person in the white community say, oh, race is a class issue. It's not a race issue. It's to do with class. And then the whole issue of racial discrimination can be pushed to one side even more than it already is. And I think that we in the UK, as far as I'm aware, we didn't have like redlining policies in the same way as the US, but we still had those policies. We just hid them in class system. So it's really very poisonous and really structurally embedded in our country, or my country, in such a way that we're now in a place where the government just released a report which said that there is no structural discrimination in the UK at all. And that's, I know, I see Diane laughing. It's ridiculous. But that was a government, and it's insane to say that, and completely inaccurate. But that's where we're at right now in terms of these things. It's so hidden in that way that the institutions themselves, refuse to see it. So I just wanted to say a bit more about that, because I know that class is used in the same way as the US, but it's we didn't have GI Bill or redlining in the UK, but the result is exactly the same, that we have median wealth, which is 10 times higher for white people than it is of Black people in the UK. And we have the Atlantic slave trade, which was the origin of, the historical legacy is exactly the same. So we're kind of really related, I feel, in this.
Thank you, Susie. I just wanted to just share my screen just for a second. And here's the median wealth in the UK. For every £1 that white people have, Black Caribbeans have 10 pence, 20 pence, and Black Africans have 10 pence. So it's not at all about race, though. Bangladeshi have 10p, right? So anyway, just wanted to mention.
Can I make a point about all this?
Please, Larry.
So when I used to teach history, especially American race history, I always ask the kids, and actually teachers too, what's the difference between wealth and income? Most people, too many people conflate wealth and income as the same thing. So if you've got if you got $100,000 in income, you think, I got wealth. Not if it's income. If you have $100,000 in income and you don't own property, wealth is property. Property is what generates wealth. All the reasons that you all talked about, when you have wealth, when you have property, you can leverage, you can do all these other things. So many people have income, but they don't have wealth. And that's why property ownership is so important. And that thing that you just showed is about who's allowed to get property. The other thing in Great Britain, Great Britain is like, 300, 400, 500 years older, 600 years, 1,000 years older than we are. The redlining and all the things that we brought into the New Deal. First of all, the New Deal was not a new deal for Black people. It was the same old deal. Second of all, those things, property was just beginning to be distributed. So all those things were more relevant in the New Deal history, which had no application in a way to Great Britain. That everybody already either had property or they did, and that was it. Inherited wealth was locked.
Thank you, Larry.
Here it was more fluid.
Dazine, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Lane. Um, I have a few comments, but the one that is most pressing given the time is that um, I just want to speak to the fact that we have covered a lot of very sensitive, hard, it's been a hard conversation in that there has to be space to process because this in and of itself, just hearing all of the stories has been so fulfilling and so traumatizing. And as a therapist and as someone who is committed to the healing of myself and my lineage and people around me, I just want to Diane and Lane, maybe we can have a conversation at some point, but I'm watching the clock and I'm getting anxious about jumping off and back into the world at 1 o'clock, having not been able to really fully bring this into my body and out into a productive place. And so I just really wanted to give voice that that is a thing that is happening with me and probably others, and that I'm committed to these conversations and also committed to the moving through of these emotions as well. And so I'm so glad to be here and looking forward to having another conversation that does that. So
Well, Dazine, I so appreciate what you're saying there, and I absolutely agree with you. And I'm just wondering, as a therapist, do you have a suggestion about how we could maybe do that in the moment?
oh boy.
I
So
don't want to make you work and
no, I'm very clear when I have to do my own healing work. I can't expel it out if I'm not full. But one thing that I would suggest is for people to carve out some time to just be still and to process it in your own way, whether it's, journaling, calling a friend, just getting it out so that you don't take it into the next space unspoken. And so I know I have people who I can call and say, hey, I need 3 minutes to just dump this out of me, and they don't take it on them. And that's been extremely helpful. So journaling, just having some quiet time. If you have time to get in a Epsom salt bath, things to just really acknowledge what we put in, so that it doesn't get stuck. I'm going to dance. I'm going to do an African dance class a little bit later. So moving your body is a really good way to do it. Drink some water, just, general self-care. It would be my suggestions just off the cuff.
so appreciating what you're saying there. Really appreciate it. And actually, I just want to invite everybody right now to just take a moment and just notice your body right now. Just notice your body and notice how this is how 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 your body is responding in the moment to all that has been shared. And just be with that. And first of all, just acknowledge it and allow it to be there. I personally notice that when I do that, I notice the tears that I've been kind of keeping off. The conversation is super important, and also there's a conversation happening inside of each one of us. And I really appreciate you bringing our attention to that. And maybe actually somebody, if somebody wants to share about what's happening inside of you, not just what's happening on the outside, that would be super welcome. Anthony,
Yeah,
right? Go on.
I had an experience the other day. There was a white gentleman explaining how he saw Black people, Latino people. He was a recruiter for the National Guard. And he had a very strong opinion. And I could tell by the way he expressed himself that he didn't really know me or what I've gone through. And I'm a military retiree. And I knew that he would not be able to handle what I would say to express who I am and what I've gone through and why my worldview is the way it is. And so when I drove home that day, earlier this week, I was very frustrated that that is the main thing, is that I just want to be heard by the people who need to hear it.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm hearing you right now saying how unheard you often do feel in this world, and how, and it turns into a kind of a silencing and a kind of a voicelessness. I'm going further than what you said, but
No, that's exactly how I feel.
thank you for sharing it.
What is that quote that says the devil's greatest gift is, or trick, is that he convinced the world that he doesn't exist? This is what white folks constantly do about racism, right? It's constantly about something else. It's not about race. And racism is that devil, right? And so people are always trying to justify and make it that it's not the devil that exists. It's something else. And so we need to like call that out for what it is.
Yes.
It's like Jordana's quote from Malcolm X about white supremacy won't even admit that the knife has been plunged in for 400 years and is still there.
Sundiata has had his hand raised for a while.
Go on, Sundiata.
Hi all. I was kind of choked up earlier when I was watching the hard facts. And you know, I've been so-called black a long time, to quote Bernie Mac. But when I saw those hard, cold facts that Jordana and particularly Jordana's presentation, and how it's just there in your face. I don't, you know, for us, it's something that we've known. I mean, if you're conscious, you've known this a long time. And you probably pick and choose who you even want to discuss it with, because it's very emotional for us. But I admire the way that Diane told her story, and with not much emotion to it. I mean, they're in there, but we're past being emotional now. It's time for action, and it's time for self-reflection and healing. And it's funny that you used that Malcolm X quote, because we had a discussion about it yesterday. That is one of the best quotes that's ever really, to me, it's ever really kind of explained what's going on here. Because I was born into a time where all this stuff was already in place. So my mother had no intentions of home ownership because she didn't know anything about it. You know what I mean? My grandmother owned a home, and it was, you know, probably it was cheap, but it was something that she owned. And the mentality of owning property, the ignorance, or I'll say the not knowing about the redlining and all these other vicious undercurrents of wind that's being pushed against us, it's like, it's very, very disheartening. But at the same time, it's empowering to know. And I thought that was very, very, I don't know, I had a lot to say. I'm not going to say too much. I want to be quiet. I missed the breakout set because I had technological difficulties. But pretty much, I'm just impressed, and I'm glad that people are talking about it.
Good to hear your voice, Sundiata.
I just want to say that hearing Diane's story and then seeing the Lanes and others the economic disparities that still exist, and the institutional racism that still exists. When I think back on my history book, Devian and Ham, that I had in high school, and seeing some of these scales fall from my eyes over the past few years, it just reinforces what I see in terms of racial, economic, and amnesia, historical amnesia, racial amnesia, economic amnesia, and this country has it. It doesn't seem to go away, and that's what if you want to be a progressive, that's what we're fighting.
One more comment. My queen had pointed out earlier that we mentioned class, and class and race, they do get kind of interchangeably moved around, and there's a lot of code languages that happen. Spreading like we're a disease, keeping things out and not using the terms. Those things are all class issues. And here in America, there is a caste system that's very, very cloaked, and it affects even Europeans, and they don't know it, that you're in a caste system yourself. If you are a 14th Amendment citizen, there's certain things that go along with you that don't go along with a free person. So everybody on this line probably has some research to do as far as how free you really are.
I just want to read what Anthony just wrote there in the chat. The data presented here is what I needed to complete my effort for racial justice, for social justice. I wrote Eradicating Recidivism, Evangelism for African American Men Impacted by Mass Incarceration. This data presented helps me in steps I will take in my community effort. Wow, I want to read that, Anthony. Thank you.
Okay.
Lily asks if you could write a link to your paper or your book, Anthony.
Oh, let me try to do that while you all are talking for these few minutes. You can find it.
More literature, that's what we need by us.
And Anthony, I see that Jordana offered to support your work, and you know Jordana, or at least there she is, there's Jordana. Jordana has done a wealth of, and is still doing, because I said in August, she's doing, and her group are doing a workshop on wealth, the wealth that was developed from slavery. So who benefited in big ways? It's all these big Northern companies. So she's been doing that research for a long time. So Anthony, she's a resource that you want to bring. She's a fighter. She's a tiger for racial justice. Jordana,
Okay.
racial justice. Yes.
All righty.
So Diane, I think we're about at when
Okay.
you wanted to do your next thing.
And so I'm kind of doing that and peppering all through this. I want to call on Frank to talk about the upcoming events, and I'll talk about those with him. So Frank?
Yeah, and I just want to first and foremost thank everybody for coming out. As Juneteenth gets more prominence, there are many more things that people can decide to do on Juneteenth. So I'm really honored that everyone came out to share this with us, because it means a lot to our organization. And the next event we have, it's going to be July 17th, and it's going to be going over the marijuana industry and how that has evolved rapidly in the last few years, and how it's exactly the same where it systemically keeps Black and brown people from taking part of it. So you know, you help build an industry, they lock you up, they make it legal, and then who benefits? A bunch of rich white folks. Philip Morris and those guys swoop in, and you know, you've got cigarettes, marijuana cigarettes in a pack, and we're still in prison and can't be involved in the industry. So Sarah Naturals is going to be helping to lead that, and they're one of the Massachusetts' larger dispensaries and licensing organizations. So they're going to be speaking with us about how it's gone and specifically how we can get more Black and brown people to participate in that industry and legally benefit from it.
Sounds like it's going to be some high concepts being discussed.
Yeah, it'll be close to home for a lot of people, and the same thing, it just never changes. Now, how can we figure out how to make a profit and keep them from benefiting? So it's more the same, but Sierra is very committed towards trying to get more Black and brown faces into those meetings and into those rooms and benefiting from the enormous wealth that legalized marijuana is bringing into Massachusetts now.
And I want to add to what Frank is saying, because Sierra Natural has some things in the plans for that. But let me just be clear. The things that Sierra Natural and other aspects of the I have Farrell's word, and other parts of the cannabis community, they are obligated by their licensing to spend 3% of their gross income on the communities that have been disproportionately impacted, and that is Black and brown communities. So it's a great thing that they're doing it, but they have to do this. But what we're trying to do is to help them to do it, to get this understood, and so more people can participate in it, because it's very easy as one of these industries to say, look at all the things that we tried to do to get Black people involved, and we can't find them, they don't show up. And then they still go ahead to make $1 trillion. So,
You know, it strikes me as Frank was talking, if I may, that the marijuana industry is a great model because of all the billions that it'll generate. It's a great model for what happened in the car industry, the plane industry, the agriculture industries, you know, because don't tell me that there aren't hundreds, if not thousands, of Black people cultivating marijuana. But are they ever going to get ownership over the shops and the distribution, the retail? What's in place, given what you're saying, Diane, that's by the law? Let's see if it actually gets enacted.
Now, what they're talking about, I've heard about that in other industries it's called an inclusion rider. And there's been some activists, actors, and I hope some athletes that are also going to involve themselves in this, which is the enormous amount of money being made. Some of it should be distributed back towards people who are being, I would say, unfairly disadvantaged. And so for somebody who's making a $300 million concert to give 1% to their crew and 1%, to a disadvantaged community as an inclusion rider, I think it's powerful for enough people do it. And the people on this line, if you're involved in other things, we can do some things like that. If you're involved with things, you can put in inclusion riders and do something as yourself, like Marilyn Monroe did with Ella Fitzgerald. She made sure that Ella Fitzgerald was able to perform if she showed up, and that started to change things. Michael Jackson did the same thing with MTV, and he told them, if you don't play Black videos, you don't play mine. These are things that individuals can do.
So Jordana, you want to say something about the time?
Yeah, I just wanted, first of all, to thank everyone for being here, and we're closing out. I want you to go to racialjusticecollaborative.com and join, donate, and check out our programming and our schedules there. And also myself and Diane and other people are going to hang out a little bit here after 1 o'clock. So anyone who needs to go and wants to go now, thank you for being here. And I don't know if Diane wants to say more, but the rest of us will be here, whoever wants to stay, to just finish out any thoughts and feelings about what they've heard. So,
Jordana,
yeah.
I'd like to recommend this book, America on Fire. Can you see the title there?
Hold it up. Hold it up a little bit and move it a little bit toward your face. There we go.
Yeah. This
Who's
is
who's the author?
Elizabeth Hinton. She's a professor at Yale Law School.
Yeah.
This book is, the subtitle is The Untold History of Police Violence and Black Rebellion Since the 1960s.
Okay, that's
It's,
great. Thank you.
It's quite an eye-opener.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Thank you.
I would recommend Arthur Waskow's book that came out in '67, which predates what that book is. It's called Race Riots to Sit-ins. Arthur Waskow, W-A-S-K-O-W. And the thing that, you know, the race riots up until all that time were white mob riots, not black riots. And the book comes out in '67 when all of a sudden there's, you know, Detroit and Newark and so forth, right? And everybody's thinking in their minds that riots are black people destroying their own neighborhoods and, you know, and threatening the Panthers threatening God knows what. But the fact of the matter is history is white mobs against black people all the way through. I just want to make that point. And that book is really good. From riots to sit-ins, Arthur Waskow. That would predate the book that the gentleman just mentioned, from '60s to the present.
So
Good information, Larry.
we want to make sure everybody knows, so the official program is done. So
Okay.
you can hang around and listen and talk, but if you have other things to do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
I got to jump off. I got another commitment. Thank you, everybody, for
Bye,
coming.
Lane. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Lane. It was fantastic. Good job. Thank you.
Bye, Elaine. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Great to see you all. Bye-bye.
Take care.